We're going to talk about three key things that the Jaguars must do or have done in order for Trevor Lawrence to be great. I'll tell you, if they've got him started already, we'll talk about it here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. Welcome to the Locked On Jaguars podcast. I am the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, Tony Wiggins, and you can subscribe at our YouTube page for free. All you got to do is go over to Locked On Jaguars. Make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button, and then hit the bell so you get notifications each and every time we drop an episode. And then wherever you get your audio podcast when you're driving and you can't watch TV or you're listening at work, make sure you tap into that location every time so you don't miss an episode. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right. Welcome to another show. Here's what we're going to talk about today. Trevor Lawrence. So much talk has been about what the Jaguars have and haven't done. The one thing that we cannot let go by and get by is the fact that Trevor Lawrence is the key to this entire thing. Have the Jaguars done right by him? There's three ways that I point out today on the episode where the Jaguars can do that. One, the weapons around him. You have to give a gunslinger bullets, and you have to give him targets. Have the Jaguars been able to do that? We'll discuss that in some of segment 1 and 2. Protection, we'll get to that in segment 2 as well. Have they set up a proper security force around him and insulated him from the ops? We'll discuss that too, and I know that's going to be a hearty discussion. And then third and finally, good fortune. I don't mean luck. I don't mean a rabbit's foot. I don't mean somebody flipping a coin. What I mean by that is the things that Trevor Lawrence cannot control, like the defense, like situational football, like the field position, those things. Can Trevor Lawrence get the benefit of having good fortune with what everyone else is supposed to do, including the coaching staff? So we'll get to all of that. We'll go through them one by one and make sure that we are able to try to extract whether or not the Jaguars have done those things, or since it's not over in terms of building the team up properly, how will that affect the draft, the rest of the draft, and then free agency after that? And do they have enough to have enough of all of those good things that you need from Trevor Lawrence? Do they have enough in order for this team to get lifted on Trevor's back this season or in the future? We talked yesterday about drafting for a career and not for a season. Now we're going to talk about guys that they can draft that's going to help them now and in the future, but we're going to base it on where they are in terms of insulating Trevor Lawrence and building this team up around him. First, the weapons. The Jaguars have used a lot of free agency resources on wide receivers in the last 3 years. They have also used a first and a third round pick on a running back. They've used a second round pick on another tight end that matches the one that they signed in free agency with Evan Ingram. I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, the effort for the Jaguars to surround Trevor Lawrence has been a 10 plus. I will say the effort that they have put up in order to surround Trevor Lawrence with weapons has been a 10 plus. You think about Christian Kirk, his contract, Evan Ingram, his ultimate signing, and then, well, his signing and then ultimate re-signing. You think about Zay Jones. They went out and got Marvin Jones Jr. the first year also. And then in the draft, they went and got Brenton Strange, a second-round pick. They had also previously gotten, of course, Travis Etienne, Trevor's rookie year, and then Tank Bigsby last year. They have tried to get people. This year, Gabe Davis. They signed Gabe Davis as a receiving threat. And there's some thought that they may look back at that in the first 2 days of the draft. And they should, because there's a lot of wide receivers in there that can play. It doesn't mean they've made all the correct and right decisions, but they've tried. And this is where sometimes I get into it with people when folks say that Trent Baalke hasn't tried, and then other folks say, well, he has tried, but it just hasn't been good enough. And there's some right about both of them. Both sides of that argument can be right. Yeah, he's tried. But you know what happens when you don't succeed? You try again. And I can't get mad at him for doing that. But the fact that you try again doesn't hide the fact that you didn't succeed the first time, which is why you're trying to get in the first place or in the second place. So yeah, this is one of those things where you attempt to give a guy a little bit of grace for at least going out and getting competent weapons for the quarterback to use and throw to. You'd like them to draft a few of those wide receivers, and you'd like them to hit on more of the ones that they do draft. Right now, you're looking at Tank Bigsby and Brenton Strange, Parker Washington, if you want to include him as a day 3 pick, as guys that they chose to actually be on this team to go out and catch passes from Trevor Lawrence. Whatever you say, they got to do a better job at that part of it. They got to do, even if you think they've done a good enough job in free agency and signing veterans and identifying players through the pro personnel side of the house that they can bring in and play, you got to admit they dropped the ball a little bit when it comes to getting young players. And young players are the key to a lot of this, because young players are cheap. They can also be, they come in like a little rough ashler. You can also shape and mold that clay into what you want it to be. First, you got to know what you mold, and you got to know what you want to mold it into. But still, those are the parts of this that by not drafting better that the Jaguars are missing out. And it does give an extra amount of flavor to your pot. It really does, because you get guys that you shape in your own image. You get career guys and you start them out as your own. You don't let other people develop them. You do it yourself. You get them for a large meat of their potential, and maybe even a large part of their peak. If you get them into their 3rd and 4th year, you can get them in a piece of their prime on a rookie deal for next to nothing. And that's the part of this that the Jaguars have not been able to get, whereas they've been playing against teams. I'll mention one, Houston, with a rookie quarterback and a rookie wide receiver that gave you all the business that you wanted last year. So, and they're going to be playing against a rookie quarterback for the next couple of years throughout the entire division. Everybody who's in the Jaguars division had a rookie quarterback last year. So those teams will be operating with what we believe will be good leadership, and they'll be getting that good leadership at a discount like the one the Jaguars have had for the last few years, but theirs is about to end. So maybe those teams will have a little bit more money to go out and do some shopping. That means the Jaguars have to do better at shopping the other way. They gotta shop the draft picks better after the first round. First round is easy. It's easy scouting. The rest of it, they have to do better. So the weapons, I'll give them a high grade for trying. I'll give them incomplete for actually succeeding. And that's because they're constantly still looking for more. They signed a wide receiver this year, and people want them to draft one in the first round this year. At some point, you got to get your weapons and say, we got them. Now let's go. Even though you're always looking for more talent, you get my point. The point is that I can't give them a full grade if they're still looking for guys at that position or those positions. At some point, if they had done better in both free agency and the draft, if they had supplemented the draft with free agency or vice versa, I would probably be able to do that, but I can't do it right now. All right, so we're going to look at the big guys. We're going to look at the protection. And once again, I think we'll arrive at one of the same conclusions, that the Jaguars have tried, but trying has not necessarily been good enough. We'll get to that here in just a second on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. That's right, LinkedIn Talent Solutions. Man, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. I built 2 barbershops, 2 in about 10 years by using LinkedIn. They got me to the right people came to me, and off we went. LinkedIn has 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals, like a professionals on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Moving right along here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars. We're talking about 3 ways to help Trevor Lawrence. We've talked about the first one. The first one is get him some weapons. Weapons are fine, but guess what? Weapons don't stop bullets. Guess who stops bullets? An actual security force, some protection, some bodyguards, some deterrence, some big guys that can stop people in their tracks. And before anybody gets all sensitive, I'm not talking about real bullets. I'm talking about bullets in the vernacular of a football game, which means the opposition. The opposition has to be stopped. And you don't be needing Luke Fortner to tell you that he's going to be the one to do it like the little engine that could every single week and going out there and ending up on his backside. Trevor Lawrence needs somebody to protect him, and he needs to know that he's going to be protected so he can just focus on football and not focus on running for his life. Quarterbacks play differently when they think they're going to be upright most of the game. Everybody gets hit. It's a part of the game, but Trevor has been hit and chased at an astronomical rate, and too many of that has come right up the middle, and hopefully Mitch Morse can win that job, and well, he don't have to win. He just got to show up, in my opinion, win that job and keep Luke Fortner in the weight room for a little bit longer, or maybe even get a replacement for him. But they have to get protected from guard to guard. They think bringing back Brandon Sheriff is the key. I wanted them to go in a different direction, but I guess the advanced metrics say he didn't have as bad a season, and it looks like he had to me. I just don't think he had that great of a year. Ezra Cleveland, you can't help but be mesmerized about his athleticism and the way he looks at over 308 pounds, but I guess the tape and the metrics say he left a little bit to be desired on the field, regardless of how he looked. But the Jaguars have said, you know what? Tape be damned in one situation. Maybe the tape don't be damned in the other one. We're going to put them together, and we're going to see if we can keep them healthy and stick Mitch Morse right between them, and that's what we're going to do, and we're going to go with it. They kept a bully, at least for right now, Cam Robinson at left tackle. And of course, they're, in my opinion, the most talented offensive lineman they have is former rookie Anton Harrison on the right side. Anton Harrison, who can play left, which leads us to think and ask the question, is offensive tackle still in play on day one? I would think so, but I've also been told by a very, very reliable source that to expect that offensive line be addressed on day 3. Based on the type of people that they have really, really been watching and the guys that they've been working out, it doesn't seem like they're going for a day 1 player. However, if somebody falls to them at 17 and they just cannot pass him up because he's just that high on they're bored like a Troy Fautanu. I don't know if they feel that way about Amarius Mims, a Talieisi Fuaga, somebody that can play the right side or the left side. They won't be prevented. Side won't have anything to do with it because of Anton Harrison's versatility. I would think that the Jaguars might move in that direction, not on the interior, but on the outside, and start looking for a career over just a year when it comes to the first round pick. Do I expect them to do that? No, I do not. However, we have to go over this stuff on here. Folks say, why are you talking about stuff that may or may not happen? Because it's called content creation, and we don't know if it's not going to happen. But just in case it happens, we put it on your consciousness, and now we touched on the subject. I appreciate you, Mr. Program Director. Thanks a lot, but we're going to keep doing it this way. All right. Have they weaponized Trevor enough when it comes to his protection? They have not. But just like I said in the first segment about the weapons on offense, they have tried. And if you notice that there's a theme here, the theme is trying ain't good enough, but trying is trying. We can't sit here and say they didn't try, because a lot of the things that we criticize the Jaguars about, we criticize them mainly based on a miscalculation last year. We can agree to disagree on talent. We can agree to disagree on who they signed. We don't know if they went out and tried to sign other players and those players said no, even though we hear about some stuff like Matt Judon years ago. You hear about things, but the bottom line is you don't know for sure or for certain, or what, you don't know the other side of it. How much did they ask for? What exactly? Like when Jadeveon Clowney didn't sign here, what did they ask him? Did they ask him to be the third edge rusher behind Trayvon Walker and both Josh Allen, who you knew they weren't sitting down, and he said no? Did he not want to be in a rotation at the time? You don't know the other end of the question. So that's why we have to give them at least a little bit of an attaboy for trying, even if they didn't succeed. So yeah, they've tried. They've absolutely tried. They've used a lot of resources on that line. Walker Little, second round pick. Wrong guy, but they tried. Anton Harrison, first round pick. They even tried to re-sign Jawan Taylor. It was too much money, apparently. So yeah. They tried with Luke Fortner when they picked him a few years ago, and then probably tried too long to make it work, even though it was apparent that it wasn't going to work. So yeah, they've tried, but once again, I will give them a B, a solid B for trying, but then a solid D for not being good enough at trying. Remember, this is an organization that came out and basically said, after watching for a year, we ain't good enough. We ain't big and physical and strong enough. And the same people that told you that are the same people that built the team to make them that way. So for that statement alone, I got to give them a C and no better. And I'll admonish them for it. Shame on you. Weapons is one thing, but there's a whole nother thing to not protect your quarterback. And to get to the point where you didn't protect them and to actually walk around with your hands on your hip, with your sundress on, with your hair blowing, talking about how cute you are. That's what happened last year. And then it turns out you weren't pretty at all. Somebody threw a bucket of water on you and the sundress got wrinkled and you look like you had it on too long. And now you look like you need to be frying fried rice or fried chicken in that sundress, because now guess what happened? You got exposed. And we have to believe now that you're going to do some of the things that you need to do to make sure that doesn't happen. I still don't know if the physicality part of this team has been properly addressed, with the exception of Gabe Davis, who's a better blocker, Eric Armstead, who's big and physical up the middle, and Mitch Morse, who's way better than who you already had in Luke Fortner. I think being bigger and physical, I think there's more to it than that, and I hope the Jaguars can get that figured out before the start of next season. Something that we have figured out at Locked On, and that is Locked On NFL's mock draft is live on April 17th. That is tonight at 7 o'clock Eastern, streaming on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on April 17th at 7 Eastern time to hear what the local experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college and football experts, and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Draft on April 17th at 7 Eastern, streaming live on Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Fire TV channels app. Now, I'm going to tell you this, 10 minutes prior to that on our YouTube page, I will have a mock draft preview of sorts for you to check out. So check that out about 6:49, 6:50 on our YouTube page, and it'll lead you right into the mock draft, which will be at 7 o'clock. We're going to talk about good fortune and whether or not the Jaguars have positioned themselves to have some good fortune, and I'll do all of that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right. Today's show is brought to you by Monopoly Go. That's right. I'm telling you, man, I loved the game Monopoly growing up, and I still do. With these kids today, they're so competitive, and you got to be able to keep them busy and keep them interested. Okay. And the competitive side of me kicks in like it always does, and I do not let young kids win. Monopoly Go is why I'm such a big fan. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is just messing around with your family and friends. It's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can learn and team up with friends and people around the world in timed tournaments to huge rewards and earnings. So get in on the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. That's download Monopoly Go, which is now free on the App Store or Google Play. All right, third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. 3 ways the Jaguars can help Trevor Lawrence. 1 is surround him with weapons. 2 is to protect him while he uses those weapons. Last but not least is something that's a little bit more difficult and is a little bit more nuanced and is not quite as specific. They have to provide some good fortune for Trevor Lawrence. What do I mean by good fortune? Quarterbacks don't always play well, like Trevor really did in the first 11 weeks of last year when they were 8-3. But the defense played extremely well. I know there's some fired defensive coaches that don't want to hear that, but it is the truth that while Trevor wasn't necessarily playing well and the offense wasn't clicking, for the first 11 games, the defense held it down. They turned the ball over at a very, very high rate, which was one of the highest rates in the National Football League, and they did their thing. And then the rest of the team decided they weren't going to join the party. And what happened is the defense let everybody catch up with them. And now the Jaguars go on a losing streak that ends them up 9-8, and they miss the playoffs. Good fortune has to be more of a presence this year for the Jaguars to have different success. I know they did it the first 11 games, but they're going to have to do it again. The defense has to come out and they have to turn the ball over. The defense has to come out. The defense has to make sure that the other thing that they do is they don't let teams extend drives. You got to give Trevor the ball back to give him more and more opportunities. You got to turn it over at a high rate. You got to switch that field position. It has to be done. Special teams. All of this falls on the coaches, by the way. It all does, just like it did last year. But it seems like because changes needed to be made, they blamed the defense for everything, when really the offense, in my opinion, was the biggest problem for the Jacksonville Jaguars this past season. It's one of the reasons I didn't want to get on Mike Caldwell all the time. I didn't want to get on Press Taylor all the time. It was the head of the snake to me. And it was the fact that they decided that you know why nothing happened last year? Because they were sitting there waiting on stuff to happen last year, just like they were sitting on waiting on stuff to happen by itself during the offseason. And you can actually allow complacency to enter your football team by being complacent. Whatever you do is going to come out. Whatever you do is going to show up. Whoever you are eventually is going to walk. If you got a bunch of roaches, they're going to walk right in front of the TV screen at 1 o'clock on a Sunday while everybody's sitting there, not only watching their food, but eating food that was cooked in that same roach-infested house, and people are going to start looking at you funny. And that's what happened to the Jaguars. Once people realized that they weren't physical, they had no hind parts or no sandbags in their pocket, we were just sitting like this every single week, just watching the massacre happen. And you saw it week after week after week where they were pushed around and they were bullied. And then you had a quarterback running around trying to make something happen, which usually leads to trying too hard. And then something happens that you don't want to happen, which are mistakes because you're trying too hard. Give Trevor Lawrence good fortune. The same good fortune you gave him early last year, but make it sustainable. Hopefully the protection is better and he ain't running for his life, and he can just relax and play football and do the things that he can naturally do that people fell in love with him as a prospect about. And if you weaponize them enough, then even when things break down, every now and then you can just throw the ball out there to a dude that can just take over the game by himself. So where are they when it comes to good fortune? This is the lowest one I'm going to give the Jaguars, because until they do it, they got to prove it. They got to prove that they're just more than good luck one year and bad luck the next. And that's what you saw at the end of both seasons. Good luck and good fortune, and then bad luck. Well, where is it? Where are you? What's the variance? How good really was 2022, and how bad was the second half of 2023? Find me that real floor. Which one is it? And I think you'll have your answer of whether or not the Jaguars are going to be able to turn this thing around on a more positive level, and then on a more consistent basis, so the variance from one year to another isn't as big as it was last year. I'm going to give them a C right now in terms of trying to go out and actually add leadership in free agency. But the fact that they had to go out and try to get that from outside sources when they are the same administration over the last 3 years of this team, it can't be higher than a C. Once again, I'm rewarding them for effort, but yet and still I'm taking a demerit back because of the fact that I'm having to reward them for stuff that they should already be doing. And that's the problem. How does it affect the draft? Well, if the Jaguars, there's some situations where they can add a good player who can help them now and it be good for their future. I talked about a cornerback yesterday. We discussed a little bit about how the offensive line can have that effect as well. If they find a wide receiver that can play, nobody will care whether he was picked in the first, second, or the third round. You just really won't. All you got to do is make sure you get somebody that can play. Even a defensive tackle. If a defensive tackle, you find a defensive tackle that is really that good, at the end of the day, if you can't keep him off the field, that means that you overpaid somebody. But that's all right, because you can identify that you overpaid somebody. It's either Devon Hamilton or it's Eric Armstead. If you draft Michael Hall and he becomes a superstar that you can't sit, well, then somebody else got to sit. It's just going to be somebody making a whole lot of money. And even if you've done that, guess what? That's what I keep going back to. You've actually got a player in here that can allow you to absorb the fact that one of the guys you're paying a bunch of money is sitting on the bench because he's good and he's cheap, because he himself is a rookie. So you can right a wrong. You can right a wrong just by being right about the player. I just hope the way that they're looking at it, when they make their decision, they're deciding to lead with who's going to have the better career than who's going to make them look better in the interim. And that, to me, is a big deal. We can't be worried about how you look right now. We got to worry about how you're going to look forever if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars. All right, I can tell you where to look, and that is on Locked On, because we've launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every angle of every league. Find League and Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. You guys make sure you check out that Locked On podcast Draft at 7. Come up about 10 minutes early and you get a preview from me, Tony Wiggins, as we head into the Locked On Podcast Network NFL mock draft that'll be on April 17th at 7 p.m. You guys take care of each other. Enjoy the mock draft and let me know all your comments, and I'll hit you back and see you next time.